At 75, Suzi Quatro has finally decided to open up about her unforgettable run on Happy Days. And the truth she reveals now is far more surprising, emotional, and impactful than fans ever expected. For decades, viewers remembered her as Leather Tuscadero, the fierce, leather-clad rocker who electrified the screen every time she appeared, a character who seemed so natural that audiences assumed the role must have come easily. But according to Suzi, the reality behind the scenes was complicated, tense, and sometimes overwhelming. She reveals that when the show's producers first contacted her in the late 1970s, she didn't jump at the opportunity. In fact, she turned it down repeatedly. She insists she never saw herself as an actress, and worried that stepping into television might damage the rock and roll credibility she had worked so hard to build. It wasn't until her family urged her to consider how powerful it could be for young girls to see a woman holding her own in a male-dominated world that Suzi agreed to at least hear the idea out. Even then, when she read the early script pages, she immediately told the producers that she had no intention of playing a watered-down TV version of herself. She refused to let Leather Tuscadero become just another cute gimmick added to a sitcom. Suzi admits now that this created early friction with executives who wanted the character to be more glamorous, more traditionally feminine, and much less rebellious. But she stood her ground. She insisted Leather needed to be tough, unapologetic, and authentic, or the role simply wouldn't work. This insistence, she says, was both the biggest risk of her career and the reason the character became iconic. Suzi's arrival on set was also far from smooth. She reveals that while the cast was friendly, she immediately felt like an outsider. Most of the actors had been together for years and were used to the rhythms of sitcom tapings, while Suzi didn't know the first thing about hitting marks, memorizing lines on a tight schedule, or adjusting her natural stage presence to fit the tone of a comedy series. She remembers feeling nervous, unsure, and completely out of place. But one person changed everything: Henry Winkler. Suzi says Henry went out of his way to guide her, defend her, and encourage her, telling her that she didn't need to act, she just needed to be herself. According to Suzi, he was also the one who pushed the network to give her more episodes after the overwhelmingly positive reaction from audiences. But the most shocking part of Suzi's revelation is the emotional weight she carried during her time on the show. She confesses that she was dealing with personal doubts about her career direction, pressure from her record label, and homesickness from being away from her tight-knit family. At one point, she even considered quitting the show despite its success. But what stopped her was the flood of letters she received from young girls and teenage fans, who were inspired by seeing a female rocker on television who wasn't portrayed as a joke or a sidekick. Suzi says these letters moved her more than anything else in her career, and she realized she had a responsibility to keep going. She wanted young viewers to see strength, independence, and possibility in Leather Tuscadero. Then came the biggest twist the public never knew. Suzi was offered her very own Happy Days spin-off. The network wanted a full series built around Leather, believing she could carry an entire show on her own. But after weeks of agonizing, Suzi turned it down. She admits it was one of the hardest decisions of her life, but she feared being trapped in a character and losing her identity as a musician. Looking back at 75, Suzi says she has no regrets. She knows the role changed her life, gave millions of girls a role model they'd never had, and showed the world a version of female rock empowerment that was years ahead of its time. And now, decades later, she finally feels ready to share the truth about the pressure, the battles, and the unexpected impact that made her Happy Days journey one of the most defining chapters of her life.